Welcome to the Coach Barnabas podcast. It's time to take a few minutes and leave behind the stuff that drains us and recharge our batteries with some encouragement and insight. Finding the extraordinary in the ordinary.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Coach Barnabas. I'm calling this Coach Barnabas Timeout. And as you can see, if you're watching on the YouTube, I've stepped outside the confines of my quote-unquote studio, and I'm enjoying this nice, beautiful southern New England day. And as the weather gets nicer, I'm going to try and find opportunities to come to you this way, and I'll identify them as Coach Barnabas Timeout, and just share with you some thoughts. Some might be brief, just little snippets, and other things might be a little more extended. But the whole point is, it's nice to get out and enjoy a beautiful day like this. If you're listening on an audio-only format, just imagine, I'm in this beautiful background and it's a nice day. So do your best. And hopefully as you're listening to this, it's a beautiful day where you are. But I want to come to you because in episode 22, I talked about what are you afraid of? And really speaking about zeroing in on the courage of your convictions and being fearless, really in the context of sharing your faith, and just not being afraid of what people think, not being afraid of rejection or criticism or anything like that. And I did that on a day where before I had recorded that, I had no idea that over last weekend, there was a situation that has now since made the news and has become a pretty hot topic in media, in pop culture, and you may be aware of it. It's a situation where a multiple-time Super Bowl winning place kicker for the Kansas City Chiefs, his name's Harrison Butker. He spoke. He was the commencement speaker, the featured speaker for a private Catholic school's commencement, their graduation ceremony. And it was last weekend, Mother's Day weekend. And during his 20-minute speech thereabout, he spoke on the value and virtue of motherhood and biblical values. And you would think, in that setting, it's perfectly reasonable. I mean, it's a wonderful combination of topics. But of course, this speech broke beyond the confines of that setting and reached the media, and now it's fodder for people to rake him over the coals. The NFL has now come out and officially distanced themselves from his comments because they're considered controversial. And you know what? in the wake of episode 22, talking about having the courage of your convictions to speak up. Excuse me. If he was more concerned about backlash over something that, I don't know, is common sense. Let me give you some context if you're unaware of the story. During the commencement speech, he commended and congratulated and complimented all of the graduates, and then focused in on the women and said, it's awesome what you've done. This is a great accomplishment. You should be very proud of yourselves. And whatever it is you do with your degree, career-wise, professionally, that's awesome. Go for it. But then he put it in a context of saying that basically, but it pales in comparison to eventually, being a wife, mother, and raising your children to be fine human beings, and to nurture your family. And it blows my mind that this is considered controversial. So people are literally misrepresenting what he said to make him, to demonize him. So you'll see comments about how he just wants women to be barefoot and pregnant, and staying in the kitchen, and all they do is whatever. Which is a complete misrepresentation of what he said, and certainly not at all indicative of what he believes. just putting in perspective, and I apologize, I'm still getting over my cold, so I apologize for clearing my throat. But it blows my mind that this is considered controversial, as if these values, held by people who most likely were raised as I was. My mom stayed home. She did not work. She was home and she took care of me. When I came home from school, she was there. Maybe that was a fortunate situation. It was a different time, because now, quite frankly, life is very expensive, and it oftentimes takes two paychecks. It takes two incomes, to help people make ends meet, especially if you have children, multiple children. It's understandable. So he certainly wasn't saying women's place is in the home, not in the workplace. He said nothing like that, nothing resembling that. But of course, it has to get blown out of proportion and twisted into that. And it's ridiculous, to be honest with you. But it just seemed topical to come to you today and say, you know what, here's a guy who is in the public eye. I don't know if he has endorsements and whatever, but he's obviously making a pretty good living. And he's obviously at the top of his craft, being probably the best, or at least among the very best at what he does. And he's well paid for it. So he had the courage of his convictions to speak his mind, speak about his faith, to speak about how important it is, despite your accomplishments, and you should be proud of them. Despite all of that, what a wonderful opportunity it is, and how it should be celebrated and prioritized, that your number one objective, if and when the day comes, is to be present for your family, okay? And to nurture your children. I mean, it's unpopular to say, it's not politically correct to say this, but men and women are different. And women naturally are the nurturers. Okay, it's a way you're designed, it's the way you're wired. That doesn't mean men can't be nurturers. Of course we can. My wife says I'm a very good cat dad. I love them, and I want to nurture them. I have that in my DNA. That doesn't mean necessarily I'm as good as a woman at it, and that's okay too. So, the point is he was just extolling the virtues and the value of being a mom. And, the people objecting to this, I just don't get it. And so he's facing all kinds of backlash, and I haven't read anything, but I did see a headline that he's apologized for his comments, and I would like to read that and get the context of his apology. And hopefully he hasn't backed off of his statements, because they're right. They're spot on. And the point is, going back to episode 22, what are you afraid of? Is having the courage of convictions, to speak what is truth and not apologize. Don't back down from it, because it's truth, and there's nothing should be controversial in it. And if it is, the controversy lies within the hearer, not the message. The message is pure. The message is timeless. The message doesn't change just because society does. Just because perhaps a majority, or at least a very vocal minority, speak up and create an issue out of it, create a whole mess of it, doesn't mean the message is wrong. And we need to be bold and speak up for timeless values, for common sense values. And a lot of what we see a rise in crime, in teenage pregnancies, and in drug use, and kids not completing school, and a lot of dysfunction, teenage crime, and a number of other things, because there are issues at home. Okay, let's be honest. Now, that's not 100%. Some people just are, they choose the wrong crowd despite the best efforts of parents. There's only so much you can do, but kids are influenced by different things, and there's just only so much you can do. So obviously, there isn't 100% solution by having mom and dad in their traditional places, and the kids are going to grow up, and it's going to be Leave It to Beaver. And if you're of a certain age, that reference is probably be lost on you. But for some of you, you understand that reference. But the point is like, okay, it's not like opening a magazine from the 1950s where the mom is vacuuming the house in her dress and wearing pearls, and dad comes home in his suit and tie, and dinner's ready on the table as he reads the paper. Okay, that's a bygone era, largely speaking. So very rare is it anymore that the family eats together at the table at the same time. Everybody's got their phones open and whatever else. Okay, that's another topic for another time. I don't have a problem with that, but the point is like, okay, things have changed over time for better or worse. They've changed, but what must remain the same is this timeless value of the importance of the structure of the family and the biblical values that reinforce that. And there's nothing wrong with having those beliefs. And sometimes you're watching this and maybe things didn't work out ideally for you. And you find yourself on the other side of divorce. You find yourself on the other side of custody battles or child support issues and visitation, all that stuff. And that's certainly not a condemnation on you. Life gets messy and it's just not perfect despite your best efforts. Or maybe you were different then than you are now. Also very common, nothing to be ashamed of. God can still do amazing things in and through you when things kind of blow up. It can happen. And that's hopefully, I've been able to convey that message to you in the past, in previous episodes. But I do want to reinforce that here and now. But again, go back. Have the courage of your convictions. And if people have a problem with the message, that's okay. Your responsibility is to be true to that message and be bold in that message, and speak up for that message. Not to be confrontational for the sake of being confrontational, but to be a messenger of truth in what we believe and what you believe. You know what? And if you disagree with me, have the courage of your convictions. Speak. It's okay to say so, and we can disagree on it. But we can be we can be disrespectful, or we can be respectful in how we do it. And I always try to be very respectful when I disagree with somebody, and that's okay too. So we're not always going to agree on stuff. And you may have been with me in lockstep up to this point, and you're like, hey, whoa, this is where we, part ways a little bit. This is where. But again, I genuinely believe this, and it's not a kumbaya thing. It's not a guy trying to build an audience for a podcast or anything like that. I genuinely believe this. We have much more in common than what makes us different. Okay, where we disagree. I genuinely believe that. And if you disagree with me on this particular topic, that's fine. But I still believe this, and I will always believe what I'm saying. And I won't apologize for that, because I don't think there's any reason to apologize for it, because I'm not condemning anyone. I'm not insulting anyone. I don't wish harm on anyone who disagrees with me or has different values or thoughts. You have the freedom of choice. God gave us a free will, and you can choose what you want to choose. I choose to believe him, and these are things I believed even before I was a Christian. I wasn't raised in a Christian home per se. I didn't become a Christian until I was 18 years old. My parents, it was within the same year as me, just before me. So, I was an adult. I was a legal adult by the time my family and I had become Christians. But I was still raised, but I'm also a stepson. I'm the product of a blended family. And so despite everything, it's like, what? God did amazing things in my family. And in each member of our family, and that us together, collectively. And I'm very happy. I'm very thankful for that. And I thank God for that. Both of my parents are now gone, and I carry a legacy that they began. I continue a heritage that began in them. And I'm proud to do that. I'm honored to do that. And I'm responsible to do that. And that's our job as adults. I'm a step parent now. I'm the product, I was raised by a stepdad. So I take that role very seriously and believe that just because we don't share DNA doesn't mean I don't have the ability, authority, and responsibility to be an influence in their lives. It's very much my responsibility, not more than their own father. He has great responsibility. He's risen to that, and he's a good dad. They love him dearly, which is awesome. And I trust that they respect me as well. And I do everything I can to cultivate that. And so I'm kind of getting off in the weeds a little bit, which is, I don't know, maybe that's fitting, but being out in nature a little bit. But I just wanted to share that with you and just encourage you that even when you speak up for truth and you think like nobody in the world is going to criticize this, is going to disagree with this, is going to come against it, you'll be surprised. They will. But don't let that shut you down. Don't let that force you into your shell to where it's like, I'm not going to say anything because I don't want to stir it up. I understand it. I get it. And I sympathize with you because some of us don't want to, you don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to rock the boat, but I'm not afraid of it. I'm not afraid of it because, Jesus spent a lot of time. It's in the Bible. You can find the stories. The stories of times where he was with the disciples in a rocking boat in the middle of a storm, in the middle of, what could have been a deadly situation. And Jesus was perfectly calm, even when there was pure chaos around him. And that's how God wants us to be. Be unflappable, even in the midst of public opinion storms. Don't be afraid. Be strong and courageous. Be bold. Don't be a jerk. But you know what? Stand up. Stand up for what you believe. Stand up because those who disagree are not going to be ashamed to stand up and shout what they say. And, they have the freedom and the right to do so, and I support that. But that doesn't mean I'm going to let them shout me down, and I'm not going to stand up and speak for what's right. And so I encourage you to do the same thing. Be bold in your circle of influence. Be one who stands up for righteousness. Be one who stands up for biblical values. Be one who stands up for your family. Because I know I have people in my mind right now who, mama bear, all right, the mama bear is in you. And if anyone were to come against your child in a way that, the claws come out and you will defend them at any cost, how much more should we feel that way when it comes to standing up for Jesus, standing up for the Word of God, standing up for biblical values? How much more? Because you know what? Jesus laid it all on the line for each one of us. And because he stood up in the face of opposition, in the face, knowing the consequences, which are far greater than you and I will have to face, I'm able to be here in America and share what I'm sharing with you, be able to put it on the internet and share it without fear of consequence, without fear of the police showing up at my door and hauling me off to prison, and without any due process executing me. I have the freedom to do that. In other parts of the world, they don't have that freedom. Yet there are people who have the courage of their convictions, who will go into those places and speak boldly of their faith and speak boldly of the message God has within them, and to be a messenger of those biblical values, and hopes that even one would recognize that and dedicate their lives to Jesus and spend eternity with him in heaven. If even one happens, it's worth it. So that's my encouragement to you today. I love you. Thank you so much for tuning in and joining me. And if you disagree, I hope you'll stick with me. I do. But if you choose, this is the straw that broke the camel's back. I can't do it anymore. I wish you well. Hopefully you'll come back at some point. But this is I'm just going to stand up for what I believe, no matter what it costs me. I'm willing to do that, and I trust that you would do the same thing. Be encouraged. Be an encouragement. Be an encourager. All right. Look forward to talking to you again very soon. Take care now.
Thank you for joining the Coach Barnabas podcast. We'd greatly appreciate your support by liking and subscribing to the podcast and setting up notifications so we can let you know when new episodes are available. We'd love to hear from you, so please leave a comment. Make a difference today.